Hello fellow crafters, my name is George and this is the Spare Time G, and today, as you can see, we are going to create my favorite character from the One Punch Man anime, Genos Cyborg. So Janice is the winner from my previous poll I had about the anime Pegasus, and I have decided to use the similar frame and the scale I have utilized for Ultron in my previous episodes, and it is quite simple frame and the scale as well. It is one of my favorites so far because of this golden ratio of giving you enough material to work on and at the same time not being as large where you already start making overall large plane of spaces without any kind of detailing, and it kind of wastes too much clay. As you can see, it is quite easy frame to create. It is comprised with two parts. The base is a plastic and you of course need to fill it up with clay in order to make it heavier and sturdier, and the upper portion is like only the upper part of legs, torso itself, and hands. So here I have created the torso portion much more prominently, have added some chunks of clay and made the overall shapes of it, also the legs of course, and right now I want to add the muscle versions, muscle parts to the hands, which are not going to be showcasing them as much, but still it is kind of necessary for the overall shape and the theme of the armor plates on top of his shoulders and hands. I want to talk about the stance as well. I have based it onto the anime moment where Janice and Saitama are about to have a sparring match, and despite being a sparring match, it is my favorite fight in the series, and I just love the stance he makes where he heats up his core and the air around him starts to like the morph and glow in awesome cool orange shade. It is like I really like the design of this character. The weapons, also these modifying arm pieces into these heat guns, and overall character makes it quite an impressive anime personality in my opinion. And for me, he is much more interesting than Saitama, unfortunately, but I of course am still a big fan of One Punch Man himself. So here we already can see the overall body shape, but it is still covered with the crude clay portions, clay additions. On this stage you will have to use this curving tool to curve and put everything off, every like bumps of the sculpture itself. You will have to create as smooth torso as possible because the hands are going to later be covered with armored pieces of course. So once you're done with the smoothing process of the torso and legs, you will then have to create intentional bumps and tubes to cover everything up. Of course these parts are for borders of clothing, which separates them from other clothing or mechanical parts of the hands and arms. And also these other small pieces which are scattered onto the body represent the wrinkles. It is quite difficult to create them, to be honest, and it is my still initial moves on this side of sculpting. And to give some tips, even though I'm not very experienced in this, try to imagine what kind of movement will the fabric make once you have this certain posture. Here, for example, Janice is leaning towards the right side a little bit, so I kind of made this curves to follow the motion, if it is clear. And as you can see here on the finished version, I kind of think it turned out quite nice, but to be honest, I had to attach them and then remove because of I was not very happy with the result. So you might also have to do it several times before you're happy with the result. And now we can start painting this clothing. I will start from the trousers. Kind of wanted to create this more like bluish color of it, dark blue version. Also the upper part, the torso shirt, is going to be white as it is in most cases in episodes. It is the most iconic clothing for Janice. And at the same time, this kind of coloring will make wrinkles appear more natural and as close to a real version as possibly possible. Here you can see I have created the arms, which are like crude creations because later on we will have to still cover them up, even fingers, cover them up with the black armor pieces, so to say, because of that you really do not need to go into the details of the fingers and make them as humanly accurate as possible. Now we start adding armor pieces. It is much easier than the Ultron version was because of the amount of detailing it necessitates, and at the same time you don't really need to cover everything up with a foil in the first place and then cover the arms with them. Of course, I have still used several reference photos on the Google to be as close to the original as possible. And yeah, it is quite time consuming, more or less still. So as we are done with everything else, now we are already starting to sculpt the head of this sculpture. It is the most difficult part for this sculpture for me, unfortunately, because I do not really have that much of an extensive experience of sculpting human faces. I have been doing much of dioramas, military models, cosplay props, or superheroes with helmets and masks, or really ugly faces like a Hulk. So as the head is done, it is the final piece of a puzzle and our finished version is ready. I'm quite happy with this result, really appreciate the overall details, especially the head and how it turned out. Eyes are probably my favorite pieces. The trick here is the tiny black dots inside the yellow eyes are actually not clay but holes, simple holes you can create with a sharp object, maybe a nail or something else, in order to create this kind of nice and quite small dark spot onto the eye, of course. And I really appreciate your involvement in the choosing of the characters, and I will definitely incorporate polls in the future more often as I humanly can. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this result as much as I enjoyed the process. Genos is my favorite anime cyborgs, and speaking of them, this week's question is going to be: which is your favorite cyborg in anime, manga, or any kind of universe? Have a nice day and see you next time. Goodbye.